Hey Tenno, welcome to my channel. Dante is the latest Warframe to be released, and his reception has been mixed. From people praising his power to calls for a nerf. Let's discuss if Dante actually needs a nerf, or is he just right. Dante is a wizard style Warframe, and his main gimmick is his ability changes depending on the order they are used. He has a light ability that heals and builds Overguard for himself, and his dark ability deals AoE slash damage. So far so good, right? Well, he has more. 2 light gives Overguard to allies and allows Overguard to regenerate. This Overguard can go up to 45,000, which is a lot for base steel path. 2 dark and he can deal massive AoE DPS. He also has a summon that causes birds to deal slash damage and increases their damage to status procs. And don't forget his first ability, his Exalted Tomb Noctua, arguably the weakest part of his kit. Noctua can use all the tomb mods and can reliably provide utility for Dante himself and the team. That's a quick summary of Dante and some of his abilities. It doesn't sound too crazy, does it? Especially in a fast-paced cooperative game. Let's dive deeper into his abilities to see if he truly deserves a nerf. Starting with his Overguard, Dante's ability Triumph gives nearby abilities Overguard. To use Triumph, he needs to cast his 2 twice and then a 4. Compared to other sources of Overguard, the numbers itself are higher. Clover would need to use his 2 multiple times to reach that, and an overtuned Rhino can easily exceed that, but neither give allies protection too. Stynex with his augment can generate even larger numbers, but he would need 1 an augment and 2 to spam his abilities. What about Frost? An augment allows him to give allies Overguard as well. Dante needs a total of 3 button presses to provide that protection, but even an unoptimized build can build 10-20,000 worth of Overguard with just 1 ability. But let's step away from Overguard and look strictly at defensive abilities. Revenant is an obvious one. His 2 provides invulnerability to himself, and an augment allows him to share that invulnerability with his allies. There were calls for a Revenant Mesmer skin nerf pre-augment, but DE had buckled down and even released an augment to further improve his survivability. Of course, this all boosted Revenant to be the most used Warframe, and we might see changes down the line. But back to Dante, his Overguard is good, but mechanically seems to be in the middle of the pack with other abilities. It gives more Overguard than the other frames, but isn't a complete invulnerability like Revenant. What about his damage? AoE? Check. Slash damage? Check. Sounds like he'll be doing too much damage since he's ticking all the boxes, right? His dark damage deals slash damage to surrounding enemies, and 2 dark casts allow him to use his DPS ability Tragedy. Tragedy essentially triggers all the status procs to come on instantly for massive damage. His main nuke is using 3 twice and then a 4. 3 button presses and 3 abilities, just like Triumph. It looks amazing, it feels amazing, and deals good damage. But again, let's look at his competitors. I'm going straight for the Queen of Toxin herself, Sarin. Sarin's spores can kill with greater range at base steel path. Mesa can kill enemies that are in her line of sight. Gauss can clear rooms easily, and Colevo can red crit everything. And those are just the more obvious choices. Dante's nuke isn't doing more comparatively to other Warframes, especially since he needs 2 abilities to set up his nuke. Inherent slash procs are good, but the Garth has viral, and Hydroid rework gave him corrosive too. Mechanically, his damage is on par with other nukers, although you might argue it's on the above average side. Now I know what you're thinking. I looked at his offensive and his defense separately, but what about the whole package? A frame that's good at both? A frame like Octavia that's infinite invis and easily clears level cap enemies? What about one of Dante's closest rivals, Wisp? Wisp does similar things. She gives health boost with a 1 and nuke with a 3. On top of that, she gives her allies movement speed boost too. Wisp also has an obvious helmet slot, so you can make her even more broken. Citrine also fills that role. With damage reduction from a 2 and status spread from a 3, she too is in a position similar to Dante, and I haven't even tried out her new augment yet. But what does that mean for Dante? There are frames out there that fill a similar role, and Dante is not head and shoulders above the rest. Mechanically, Dante looks solid. Looking purely at base unmodded, Dante's 3 does 1250 slash damage. Excalibur slash dash does 250 slash damage, which makes Dante look incredibly OP. But when you scale the damage up and look at it modded, Dante isn't out DPSing other frames and not overprotecting allies. Which brings us to the question of Dante in groups. Is Dante stealing the thunder from others? If he can kill all the enemies and also make sure to babysit you with his Overguard, does that make him a bad frame? Does that mean he needs nerfs or changes? The Overguard certainly can mess with other players' builds. If you're running a Rage Hunter Adrenaline build, The Overguard might completely change how your build performs. But I'll look back at Revenant and his augment, an augment designed to protect other players, or Citrine's damage reduction. Again, a similar role to Dante. There is precedent here for nearby allies to benefit from some layer of protection. Maybe Overguard should be looked at to trigger those abilities, but that's for another time really. And what about his kills per minute? It isn't fun if someone else is doing all the damage and you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs. But like the examples we discussed, there are other frames and weapons that can clear rooms before you can too. Dante isn't the first, and certainly won't be the last. Now I'm not going to tell you to go solo, because that just isn't the answer. But if being out DPS'd matter to you, there are other options out there, which is a nice segue to say if Dante is OP. The strict definition here that I'll be working with for OP is if one particular method is the only way to play. For example, if Dante is the only frame to do an activity or mission in Warframe, and right now that just isn't true. Dante is far from the optimal choice for anything right now. Like I said in the previous chapters, he is solid right from release, but he isn't overshadowing anyone right now. I get it. There are worries of Dante locking out mains. There is a real fear for some. You might have played the frame a lot, invested lots of resources into that frame, and next release, everything you've done become redundant. The new frame does everything your main can do, but better. But Dante isn't doing that right now. I can't think of a specific frame that Dante can completely take over and make redundant. Don't get me wrong, there are frames that need looking into. Caliban, Chroma, my old main Ember, but Dante is not shifting the meta or changing it, and not even his Helmeth is making any splashes. There is precedent for DE to drop the Nerfhammer. Off the top of my head, I could think of Ember's World on Fire and Wukong. For those who weren't around, Ember's 4 could activate and all surrounding enemies would just melt. Similarly, Wukong's clone had a nerf affecting his ammo, as well as the indirect nerfs to the AoE meta. Anyone who thought of other massive nerfs from DE, let me know in the comments below. Both those examples tend to lean towards an AFK style of play. Activate an ability and let it play by itself. DE clearly did not want this style of play, understandably, and had to nerf it for a more active playstyle. Dante does not fit with this playstyle. He is active, he needs to use lots of abilities, switching to Noctua for utility, abilities for offense and defense. So there isn't an obvious AFK reason for DE to drop the Nerfhammer and nerf Dante into the ground. I talked about the numbers and mechanics, but there is one more overarching issue, not just about Dante, but for Warframe. That is power creep. Power creep is definitely there, especially in a live service game with regular updates, and there's no avoiding small amounts of power creep. That is just the nature of these types of games. Way back when, Ignis Wraith was the go-to meta weapon, then the Zariman Incarnons, and now the Circuit Incarnons. Changes to meta that make sense is good for the overall game. But on the flip side, 2 big power jumps can trivialize most of the content. Warframe, as of this moment, does not have much of an endgame. Netra Cells, Archon Hunts, Steel Path, level cap. So is Dante that power creep? Does he trivialize Steel Path? I'm not going to lie, Dante works well in base Steel Path, even with an unoptimized build. But, and it's a big but, other Warframes work in Steel Path unoptimized too. Kulevo and Dagaf for example. But not just the new frames, but older frames like Mag and Excalibur can do Steel Path on a budget too. Check out my budget Excalibur Steel Path in the link above. The point is, Dante isn't that big power creep, not in my opinion. Keep in mind, Dante is obtained right at the end of the current story, post the new war, post Angels to Zariman, post Whispers of the War. For a new player just starting, that is hundreds and hundreds of hours before getting Dante. And it does make sense, as you can then use Dante for base Steel Path. Of course, the argument will come if someone buys Dante with Plat. Likewise, someone could buy Zaku and go to level cap, or Revenant and become invulnerable. In my humble opinion, Dante isn't that straw that broke the camel's back. He's not the frame that will push Warframe into power creep hell. We need to look back at the last few Warframes released. If there is a worrying trend of power creep, let's look at last year's Warframes release. Citrine, Kulevo, Dagaf, Korvax. I won't comment on Korvax, as I don't have much experience with him. But the other 3 are all solid, powerful frames. Citrine is heavily slept on with damage reduction, status spread, and crit. Kulevo has an inbuilt self overguard and red crits all day. Dagaf is straight up DPS and viral spread. All 3 well balanced frames, and I would argue, not power creeping over other previous frames. Dante, like these 3, are solid, with his kit each working synergistically. A more modern approach compared to older frames, but not more powerful. My guess? DE will come in, tweak the number slightly, a lower overguard cap, but Dante will remain relatively unchanged for the most part. Of course, I might be completely wrong, and you can let me know down below. This is a slightly different video compared to my usual guides and builds, but I do hope that this brings about a healthy discussion on meta and power creep in Warframe. So share this video to anyone you think might enjoy this, like and subscribe for more Warframe videos like this. Bye!